Hi, I'm more. My parents told me my sister deserved the house, so they gave it to her behind my back. No warning, no conversation, just a signed will and a text asking me to keep paying the mortgage. They said I was stable, the one who always understood. But what happened when the person who holds everything up decides to let it all fall? They threw her a housewarming party in my house. Want to know how far they went to erase me? Let me tell you. It started like every other Thursday afternoon. I was at my parents' house sitting at the dining table beneath the hum of that flickering ceiling light they still hadn't replaced. The table was cluttered as usual: medical bills, insurance paperwork, prescription lists, a coffee stained envelope addressed to my dad from Medicare. I'd been the one helping them sort through this mess for years, not because they asked, just because I knew they wouldn't be able to do it alone. I reached for the next document. In the pile, an unlabeled manila folder tucked beneath a stack of utility bills. As I opened it, the words "final will and testament" stared back at me like they were embossed in ice. The paper smelled like the inside of a safe, dry, old, expensive. I paused, my fingers hovered, hesitant. I hadn't known they'd finalized anything. They usually told me a special light about things like this. I flipped to the first page, then the second. By the third, I felt my stomach sink. I skimmed faster, hoping I'd miss something. I know there was everything: house, savings, insurance assigned to Delphine, my name, appearance. One line, one sentence: we trust our eldest daughter will understand. No sits, no provisions, just understanding. I sat back, unable to move for a moment. My heart wasn't racing, my hands weren't shaking, but my mind, it was already moving through every memory that brought me to this table. I remembered the year I stayed in Austin instead of taking that promotion in Phoenix, because Dad's hip surgery left him bedridden for 3 months. He remembered wiring $11,000 from my personal savings to cover a mortgage payment they were too ashamed to admit they'd fallen behind on. I remembered when Mom told me over the phone, "You're at glue more. Not all heroes wear capes, some just wire money quietly." She laughed, so did I. It felt like a compliment back then. Now it felt like an invisible leash. The sound of that back door creaking broke my trance. I quickly tucked the will beneath a pile of documents, scanned the rest of the papers on autopilot, then got up to pour myself a glass of water, something to hold, something to anchor me. Mom was in the kitchen humming along to a song on the radio, stirring a pot of chili. She looked up, gave me a warm smile. "All set with the insurance stuff?" I cleared my throat, found something I wasn't expecting. She turned down the stove and wiped her hands on a dish towel. "What's that?" I held up the folder. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" Her face didn't change much, a blank aside. "Dilly had air for go, you know that," she said, as if I were the one being unreasonable. "She needs stability. You're doing just fine. More you always have." Dad walked in mid-sentence, holding his tablet. He gave me a quick nod, but when he saw the folder in my hands, he looked down again. "So you left her everything?" I said. My voice wasn't angry, just flat. "You didn't think I deserved to be told?" Mom's lips pressed together. "We just figured you'd understand." There it was again, the family anthem. Understand, act, absorb. It's what I'd always done, right? I didn't yell, didn't cry, I just nodded. Place the folder on the counter and stepped outside. The late afternoon light was cooling into the hazy gold. Texas evenings sometimes have the kind that makes everything look too soft, too real. I sat on the porch swing I'd paid to have rebuilt last year after it cracked beneath Dad's weight. I remembered the handyman asking, "Your house?" and me replying, "No, my parents, but I paid the bills." I leaned back, the swing creaked under me, the same creak I'd heard since childhood. But something about it now felt like it belonged to someone else. Maybe it always had. I could still hear the soft clatter of dishes inside, their voices muffled. Maybe they thought I'd cool off. Maybe they thought I'd come back and pretend none of this mattered. But I stayed right there, quiet, staring past the porch railing at nothing in particular. And then I said it low, just loud enough for the wind to catch. "I'm always the one who understands." Until now, I sat on that swing until the sky dimmed into charcoal. The porch light flicked on behind me automatically, like everything else in that house. That still ran on autopilot. I didn't go back, and I waited until I heard the clink of dishes being rinsed, the low murmur of voices tapering off. Then I slipped my keys into my purse and left without a word. To days passed without any mention of what I'd read. No text, no call, no one checking in to ask if I was Okay, and honestly, I wasn't surprised. It's easier to keep seeing someone if you pretend they're unbreakable. That morning, I was at my desk in the office finishing up a quarterly report for a client. The windows beside me stretched across the 11th floor, and even though downtown Austin pulsed below, the view felt distant, like I wasn't really inside any of it. My phone buzzed beside the keyboard. It was a text from Mom. Mortgage came out higher this month. 2030, like always. Can you send it before Friday? That was it. No greeting, no context, definitely no mention of the will I had found or the fact that they'd left me out of it completely. Not even a half-hearted hope your week's going all right. I stared at the screen for a full minute, just digits and a man mythm hovered over the reply button, but I couldn't bring myself to type anything, not a yes, not a no. The part of me fatist to rush to fix things, the reflex to step in cover. The shortfall carry fellow, that part wasn't moving. I set the phone down without responding. That Friday night, I showed up for the weekly family dinner. We usually met at the same Tex-Mex place on South Lamar, nothing fancy, just good quo and waiters who knew us by name. Delaney was already there when he walked, and she looked radiant, of course. That soft and done kind of beauty she always wore, like it cost nothing. She was seated between Mom and Dad, her hands wrapped around a glass of iced tea like she was starring in a commercial for wholesomeness. When I sat down, she smiled. Small rehearsed. The dinner started normally enough. We ordered, chatted up booth, rising gas prices, and made comments about the guacamole being too salty. Then just before dessert, I asked it quietly, calmly, so about the will. Delphine blinked, then dropped her gaze like I'd just cursed in church. I didn't know you saw that, she said, voice barely audible. I didn't even ask for the house more. I swear I feel horrible. Her eyes glistened and she dabbed them with her napkin in one of those slow theatrical movements that looks subtly to strangers but screams cue the sympathy to anyone who's seen it before. Mom reached for her hand, squeezing it dramatically. She didn't ask for this more, she said firmly. She's had such a tough few years. We just wanted her to have something solid beneath her. I looked at Dad. He kept chewing his enchilada like none of it concerned him. Then he spoke more. She's just trying to survive. Don't make her feel worse. That did it in less than 3 minutes. The entire table had shifted. I was now villain, sitting across from the poor misunderstood baby sister who had so much on her plate. No one said a word about the mortgage I'd been paying. No one mentioned the time I stayed on the phone with their Medicare caseworker for 3 hours when they were about to lose coverage. No one cared that the new havoc the installed last winter only happened because I wrote a check while they were still thinking about it. None of that mattered because Delphine cried. And I didn't, and in our family emotion always trumped effort. I didn't defend myself. I didn't raise my voice or roll my eyes. I excused myself from the table, went to the restroom, and just stood there, not because I needed to go, but because I needed to breathe without the weight of their expectations pressing against my ribs. When I finally stepped back out, I didn't return to the table. I walked straight to my car, slid into the driver's seat, and sat still in the parking lot. The engine idled. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and scrolled to the auto pay tab. The mortgage transfer was scheduled like always for the next morning. My finger hovered over the toggle switch. I didn't hit cancel, not yet, but I also didn't feel like Somione, who was going to keep saying yes. Something inside me didn't snap, but it did stop, and sometimes that's more dangerous. I didn't cancel the mortgage payment that night. I could have. I wanted to, but I didn't. Instead, I drove home in silence, letting the rhythm of traffic lights and static radio fill their space where outrage should have lived. I parked in my spot, climbed the 3 flights to my apartment, and dropped my keys in the ceramic bowl by the door with more foresee than necessary. I didn't turn on the TV or music. I didn't even take off my coati. Walked straight to the file cabinet tucked in the corner of my living room, pulled out the bottom drawer, and started rifling through papers like I was looking for proof I wasn't going crazy. Old tax returns, donation receipts, a few birthday cards I never threw away. At the very back, jam between a warranty form and some outdated W to South, was a small blue shoe box I hadn't opened in years. Thelid gave with a reluctant creak. Inside were mementos I'd forgotten. I kept photos from college, a dried Flower Delaney gave me after her first piano recital, and on top of it all a faded envelope with my name written across the front in my mother's knee cursive. I knew the handwriting anywhere. The way she looped her, I'm always too tall, always too careful. I hesitated before opening. It's me thing about seeing it again before things got so off course was like spotting an old friend across the street knowing they won't recognize you anymore. The letter was dated 7 years back. I didn't need the reminder. It was written the week I covered nearly $8,000 in emergency roof repairs. After that hailstorm tore half the shingles clean off, I unfolded the page and read, I didn't know where this family would be without you. More you. Never complain, you just do. You've always been the one who steps up. Before we even ask, I hope you know how much that means to us. You're our strongest thread in this home. I read it once, then again. A third time, that version of my mother who said us. Like it included me, wasn't the one who signed a new will behind my back. She wasn't the one sending me invoice-style texts asking for mortgage transfers like I was just a financial institution. With a pulse, this woman, the one who wrote this letter, had seen me, and now she only saw what I could give. I sat down on the living room floor cross-legged with the letter in my lap like it weighed more than paper. Shit, the room was quiet to quiet. But I wasn't crying, I wasn't even angry. What I felt was harder to name. It was something like grief, but not for a person, for a version of a relationship I thought was real, for the girl I used to hope, who thought love was earned through reliability. I used to believe that if I kept showing up, kept fixing things, kept anticipating needs before they even knew they had them, then eventually someone would say, we see you, not just here for you. That belief had shaped everything, my choices, my career, where I lived, who I didn't marry, who I stayed near. Because I thought being needed meant being loved. But this letter, this artifact, wasn't love. It was praise, and praise can turn surreal quick. When people feel entitled to it, I leaned my head back against the cabinet and exhaled through my nose slow and deliberate. Then, with the pen usually used to sign rent checks, I flipped the letter over and wrote on the back in block letters, I'm done. Note out of spite, not to shock them, just because I needed to see it written somewhere other than my own exhausted heart. The weight didn't lift. This wasn't some cinematic release. But I folded the letter, tucked it back in its envelope, and placed it in the box with everything else that once felt like proof of my place in this family. I shut the lid, slid it back into the drawer, and stood up, not lighter, but straighter. Some endings don't come with final fights or closing statements immediately. They arrive quietly on a floor in your own apartment while the city outside keeps moving like nothing changed. But something had, and even if no one else noticed, I did. Saturday morning came with its usual quiet, soft sunlight bleeding through the blinds, the low hiss of the coffee pot finishing its cycle, and my apartment finally still. After a restless night, I sat cross-legged on the couch nursing a cup of dark roast that had long gone lukewarm, trying to settle me thoughts. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone, but I did what most of us do when we're avoiding reality. I scroll opened Facebook, let the feed wash over me like static, and there it was right at the top. Some items. Giving your all still isn't enough, but we gave it anyway to both our daughters. Even when one forgets, underneath the words sit a photo my parents and Delaney on the porch swing, same porch I paid to rebuild, the same swing I sat on 2 nights ago. Well, they let me disappear in silence. Delaney had her head tilted against Mom's shoulder. Dad's arm rested behind them. It looked warm, honest, familiar. It looked like the kind of picture people would stop and admire, maybe even feel something about. And it was a lie. I didn't share it, didn't comment, just stared at it for a while, long enough for the coffee to go cold and my chest to grow tight with something I refused to name. At noon, my phone rang. It was on there. I let it go to voicemail, then Cousin David, then Uncle Ray. They all said the same thing in slightly different tones. Sweetheart, what's going on? Your parents seem hurt. They say you've distanced yourself, that they don't understand why your mom was in tears last week, you know. None of them mentioned the will. None of them asked if I was okay. None of them knew I'd been covering the mortgage, the medical deductibles, the leak in the roof, that I'd skipped promotions, turned down transfers, stayed nearby like an unpaid insurance policy. They only knew what was posted, and to them that was enough. The worst part wasn't the betrayal, it was that they rewrote the narrative so casually, so seamlessly, that people who'd known me since childhood accepted it without hesitation. I wasn't the daughter Whoa, carry everything. I was now the one who forgot. That word echoed more than it should have. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I didn't send rebuttal messages or post me side for all to see. Instead, I opened the Notes app on my phone and started typing, not to explain, not to argue, but to remember. I wrote down everything: the dates I wired money, the times I took days off work to drive them to appointments, the exact cost of that prescription plan I'd been silently refilling for over a year. The quotes from emails, snippets of text threads, even photos of receipts I still had in a folder titled Family Per Bill Snip for revenge, not even for justice, just so that when the next person Caledon said they don't know why you're pulling away, I'd have something to ground myself, a way to say no, this happened, you didn't imagine it. I scrolled to the top of the note and added a title, typed it slowly, deliberately. If they get to write the store, why then I get to write mine. The coffee was cold, the living room was quiet, but I felt centered for the first time in what felt like minutes. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again, another message from a family friend. Someone I hadn't spoken to in ages. Saw your mom's post, hope things are okay between you two families. Everything. She stared at it. Family is everything. That's the kind of thing people say when they've never had to choose between being included and being used. When the only version of family they know is Sunday dinners and birthday calls, not the unspoken expectation to be the one who fixes everything while being irascible in the process. I didn't reply. I closed the note, plugged in my phone, took a long sip of the cold coffee, then poured what was left down the sink. No anger, no drama, used a quiet understanding that if I didn't preserve the truth for myself, no one else would. I held the envelope like I might bite a plain check inside. No note, no signature, no apology, just a gesture, if you could even call it that. I didn't tear it up, didn't cash it, ether, slid it into a drawer, and walked away the same way I'd started walking away from all of them. The following afternoon, he stopped by the house. Not out of nostalgia, I needed to grab a few maintenance invoices I had left in the kitchen drawer. That's when I saw the truck to lines, hatchback set parked in the driveway, the back filled with boxes, a moving van half unloaded sat idling at the curb. Two guys were hauling a dresser through the front door while Delphine stood on the porch directing traffic like she owned the place. Put those in the main bedroom, she called out, and make sure the curtains go in first. That's my sanctuary now, Miss Sanctuary. She didn't see me parked across the street. Or maybe she did and didn't care. No call, no heads up, not even a fake hey, hope this is okay. It wasn't like I needed permission. I was the one paying for the place, still was technically, but the audacity of it hit differently when I saw the moving van and realized she wasn't just visiting, she was claiming I didn't get out of Thacker, just sat there gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles had. Then I backed out, turned the corner, and drove off without being seen. Or at least that's what I told myself. 2 days later, I got an email from Mom's, subject line: revised financial plan, please review, attached was a PDF labeled updated medical budget. I opened it expecting to see some new estimates. Instead, I found my own spreadsheet, one I'd written 6 months earlier when Dad's physical therapy copays doubled. Every column, every projected cost, even the font color identical. The only thing different, waste name on the footer, prepared by Delaney Rivers. I stared at it for a long time, as if the data would rearrange itself and prove me wrong. It didn't. I called Mom. She answered quickly like she knew why I was calling. Do you realize if it plan is mine? I asked. My voice wasn't sharp, but it wasn't soft either. There was a pause. Then she said, Delphine's trying, honey. She's not as detail-oriented as you are. Just let her have the win. It'll boost her confidence. Let her take credit for my work. She's doing her best. I hung up without replying, no doubt of spite, because I knew whatever I said would bounce off the walls of that house without echo. That night, I opened at my laptop, drafted a message to both of them. Short, direct: this is the last time you'll stay silent. I've covered the mortgage, the repairs, the hospital fees, or if anything else I've created or contributed is repackaged under someone else's name, I'll treat it as misrepresentation. This is not a threat. This is documentation. I attached the original spreadsheet for reference, dated, watermarked, sent the email, closed the laptop. No response came that night, none the next morning either. But by noon, I found another envelope in the mailbox, hand delivered. No return address, and other checks still unsigned, blank. Checks say a lot. They say we still expect you to fix it. They say we know we're crossing a line, but we'd rather throw money than look at what we broke. They say you're not part of the decision, but you're expected to pay for the consequences. I didn't cry, didn't trend. I folded the check, filed it away with the last one, and finally I opened a new file on my desktop. Its title, Evidence of Absence. If they were going to pretend I wasn't the one who held everything together, I'd make sure. I never forgot it myself. That file stayed open on my desktop for the rest of the evening. Evidence of Absence. I didn't type anything in it that night, just stared at the blinking cursor like it was daring me to stop pretending I wasn't the one holding the weight of a family that only acknowledged me when it needed something. Next afternoon around 3:15, I was sitting in the pharmacy drive-thru, waiting to pick up Gordon's prescription refills, yes, still under my account. When my phone rang, it was Mom. I did bad at dance wearing, but did a bad habit I hadn't broken yet. Her voice was cheerful, almost sing-song. Hey sweetheart, Delines thinking about leasing a car. Just a little used thing to get her to and from the job interviews. You know how hard it is out there. I didn't respond. She took miscellaneous as permission to keep going. She'd like to lease through the credit union, but they want a cosigner. She's to me. If we could ask you, I told her I'd call and see what you think. I stared ahead at the car in front of me, inching toward the pickup window. Mom kept talking. It won't affect your credit score, and you're not responsible for anything. Not really, just your name to help her get approved. You're the most stable out of all of us. There was that word again, stable, their synonym for expendable. I took a breath. So let me get this straight. You want me to cosign a car loan for the sister who just moved into the house I've been paying for, using my financial plan with her name on it? There was a pause. Then she sighed more. Don't make this about the house. We'll have different ways of helping. You're good with numbers. Delphine has people skills. I didn't laugh, but I let out something close, a bitter exhale that made the pharmacy tech at the window glance up. Tell her to ask someone else, I said. I'm not doing this. Before she could respond, I ended the call and pulled forward to collect medication. I didn't even bother asking if I'd be reimbursed this time. The next morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. 30 minutes later, the same number rang again. This time I picked up. Ms. Rivers, a woman said. This is Kathy from Hill Country Credit Union. We're reaching out regarding a joint account that's recently gone into overdraft. Your name is still listed as an authorized account holder. My mouth went dry. What account? Gave me the number I barely recognized. It was one I'd opened a decade ago to help my parents consolidate their bills during a rough patch. We'd never officially closed it. I assumed it had been forgotten. Apparently not, she continued. There was a transaction last week for $4,126, a payment to Texas Imaging Associates. My stomach turned. Medical charges? I never authorized that. I said, I understand, ma'am, but since your name is on the account, we'll need your consent to formally remove liability and close it. I ended the call, drove straight to the branch near my office. No appointments, no hesitation. It took 40 minutes to untangle myself from the mess. But when I walked out of there, my name was no longer tethered to anything with theirs on it. That night, I drafted a final email to both parents. Attached tight was a notarized letter signed, scanned, and sealed, effective immediately. I withdraw from any and all financial associations, formal or informal, related to Gordon Rivers, Lorraine Rivers, or Delphine Rivers. This includes, but is not limited to, banking institutions, utility accounts, property deeds, vehicle to list, credit arrangements, insurance policies, and health coverage. Do not use my name. Do not forward mails. Do not assume consent or connection. This is not a request. This is a boundary. I didn't expect a reply. I didn't need one. The evening, I poured a glass of wine, sat on the balcony, and let the silence stretch, the kind of silence that is to feel lonely now. It felt earned. But the quiet didn't last. My phone buzzed on the armrest. A message from Delphine that was dramatic. Sis, I stared at it, half expecting more, an insult, a guilt trip, something that would twist knife just a bit more. But that was it. 5 words. That was dramatic, sis. I didn't need to, because if drawing a line makes me dramatic, then maybe you should have started performing a long time ago. I left a line's message on read. 5 words, no punctuation, a brush off, disguised as sisterly banter. That was dramatic. Sis, and yet that little text rattled around in my head like a loose screw all weekend. By Saturday afternoon, I needed to get out of the house. I tossed on a light sweater, grabbed my keys, and drove to the grocery store. I wasn't there for anything in particular, just wandering aisles and trying not to think. But the universe has a twisted sense of humor. Near the checkout, I ran into Mrs. Consincade, an old neighbor from our childhood street. We made small talk, and just as I thought I'd escaped without emotional whiplash, she tilted her head and smiled. "You didn't go to the housewarming, huh?" My face must have said enough, because she added, "Oh honey, it was lovely. Delaney had this whole slideshow. Your folks were glowing. There were pictures of tea. He backyard after y'all redid it. That swing set turned out beautiful." I smiled politely and nodded, feigning ignorance, then pushed my cart forward and paid for the single pint of blueberries I hadn't meant to buy back in the car. I sat frozen behind the wheel, the air conditioning blowing stale air into silence. Housewarming, they threw a party in the house I was still paying off, and no one had the decency to tell me. No call, no invitation, not even a backhanded group text. Just exclusion by omission. When I got home, I searched the event on Facebook. There was tagged photos, heart emojis, comments from people I barely remembered. "You're such a blessing, Delaney. Your parents must be so proud. This girl right here, she's holding it all down." Not even a single mention of me, not one. I scrolled through the photos until I found the porch, the one I paid to have repaired, the one I stained myself with a brush at dusk while Dad sat inside complaining about the draft. There was Delaney on that same porch, posing in front of a potted fern I'd picked out, smiling like she'd been there all along. And then that Sunday morning, my phone buzzed again, this time with a tag notification from a local news article. "Youngest daughter's sacrifices keep family together through health struggles." The headline sat above a glowing profile piece, a story about how Delaney had returned home to help her aging parents, how she'd stepped up during tough times, taking over household tasks and easing their burdens. There were quotes from Mo Mevin, Dad praising her maturity and grace, not a word about who had covered their premiums, or the late night calls to insurance, or the fact that their mortgage was auto-drafted from my account for 7 years. They didn't just erase me, they replaced me. I didn't cry, didn't yell. I laughed once, not because anything was funny, because clarity so many times serves as a laugh when what you really want to do is scream. I opened the document on my computer. My running archive, dates, wire transfers, tax receipts, photos of invoices, records of Rivalry repair, delivery, payment, pharmacy pickup, bank statement. Then I opened ASIC tab, drafted an email, attached the file, addressed it to the family attorney. Wow. Had once handled Dad's pension paperwork, BCCD my accountant, and finale just for the record added my own email to the CC line. Subject: estate discrepancy, record attached, body for documentation purposes only. Please keep this on file for future reference. No further action required. At this time, I didn't send it out of spite. Sent it so the truth would exist in more than just my private cloud folder. That evening, just before sunset, I poured a glass of water and stepped onto the balcony. The city moved beneath me in its usual rhythm. Dog walkers, delivery bike scooples, strolling past crosswalks. They didn't quite wait for my phone. Buzzed once on the table beside me, a new message, feeling petty now. Delphine, again. She always knew how to twist a knife with a smile. I didn't answer, didn't even open the message fully, but I did look up at the horizon and whisper just to myself, if truth makes me petty, then I alone. That crown. The next day, the air felt heavier, like the sky hadn't made up its mind whether to rain or just hang there gray and waiting. I opened the windows in the living room, but kept the blinds tilted. I didn't want light, just air. Deline's message still sat unread in my notifications, mocking me with its smug brevity. You're being dramatic. This is at a courtroom, more or maybe not, but the truth deserved documentation. Even if no one cared to read it, I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I opened my laptop, pulled up the folder I had meticulously cured over the past few weeks, and gathered the attachments. First, the full mortgage history, every payment, every day, every amount. Then the scanned copy of the original, the one drafted before Delaney moved home, and the narrative shifted overnight. I addressed the email to the family's longtime attorney, 6 my own legal contact, and included the notary's office that Handled the most recent revision subject line. Let the record show. No dramatic closing, no passive-aggressive comments, just facts. I hit send, the screen refreshed. Then Ikla said laptop to hours passed. Silence, no acknowledgement, no apology, not even a laden reaction from dad asking why'd you do that. My phone rang once. Lauren declined. A second later Gordon declined. Then a call from a blocked number. I didn't need the caller ID to guess that one. I let ring until it stopped. Afterward, I switched to airplane mode and let the world stay out that waste. First moment in months I didn't feel like I owed anyone a response. The quiet wasn't lonely anymore. It was peace, not loud, not dramatic, just earned. By morning, I had made a decision. I got dressed to grab a folder from the kitchen table and drove to a small title office north of town. Nothing fancy, one receptionist offices, a flickering coffee machine in the corner. The woman behind the desk recognized my name from the property file. I've been listed onto many documents over the years. I signed a severance form officially, legally, emotionally. I was out. No more silent backing, no more financial fingerprints on a life I no longer belonged to. It took 23 minutes. I kept the signed copy in my purse. Not out of fear, just as a reminder. In the way home, I stopped by the old house, not to go in, not even to knock. It pulled up along the curb, walked up to the mailbox, and dropped in the house. Came no note, no farewell speech, just the clink of metal on metal as it hit the bottom. And I didn't wait around to see if someone peeked through the blinds. I didn't check the porch or glance at the flower bed I used to weed every spring. It turned back toward my car and drove off. That night from my apartment window, I could see the clouds finally give in a quiet rain. Painted streaks on the glass as headlights blurred below. I glanced at my phone, half wondering if another message would come. It didn't, but something else did. Curious, I checked the county listing website for properties recently posted for sale there. It was 2647 Springdale, at a new single-family home. Charming updated porch, great bone nesser. Photo showed the swing I'd rebuilt. The one Delaney posed on the one they never on said thank you for the porch light in the picture was off, but the weight that was off me now. To 2 weeks later, I drove past the house one final time. I hadn't planned to. I was on my way back from a workshop idled at the college, an elective on budgeting basics for seniors who never had to manage their own money until now. It had gone well. Light laughter, a few appreciative nods. A man in his 70s whispered on the way out, I wish someone had explained this to me before my wife passed. The sun was dipping low as I turned onto Springdale Avenue. Of habit more than anything there, it was 2647. The grass hadn't been cut, the windows were shut tight, and the for sale sign in the yard was slightly tilted, its bottom half flapping in the breeze. No cars in the driveway. No sign of Delaney or anyone else. I didn't stop. I didn't need to, but I slowed down just enough to really look at the house. The aunts demanded everything from me without asking if I had anything left to give. The porch still had the swing the Samuel I'd rebuilt, the one she'd used in the listing photos. I didn't feel anger, just distance, like remembering a version of myself I no longer spoke. That night, after dinner and dishes, I returned home to my smaller rental outside the city. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a modest backyard with a fence just tall enough to keep out the world. I opened the mailbox on my way in, just junk and 1 cream-colored envelope with no return address inside, a single sheet of paper. My mother's handwriting, careful, like she'd written it slowly, afraid that paper might crack under the weight of her words. I should have protected you too. I saw what you carry and mistook your quiet for indifference. You were never invisible more. I just didn't look hard enough. No, I'm sorry, no plea for reconciliation, just acknowledgement. Too little too late. But it was more than I expected. I placed it on the counter next to the letter she wrote years ago, back when I was the glue, the helper, the invisible backbone. Later that weekend, I sorted through old boxes I hadn't touched since the move, in one tucked between receipts and an unused planner. I found the envelope with her original letter, the one where she called me the thread that holds this family together. Funny how the same hand wrote both letters, yet they lived on opposite ends of truth. I placed them in the same drawer, not to honor them, not to keep wounds fresh, but because I didn't want to erase anything. Not the girl who tried too hard, or the woman who finally walked away. I didn't frame them, but I didn't throw them Either healing isn't about pretending it never hurt, it's choosing not to keep bleeding over the same story. These days my mornings are quiet. I teach part-time, bake on Sundays. Volunteer with a local food bank on Wednesdays. My phone rarely rings. And when it does, I don't jump. I still remember their birthdays. I just don't reach out anymore. I haven't blocked anyone, but I don't pick up either. Some calls don't need to be answered. Some silences speak loud enough. I'm not angry, I'm not even sad. I'm just free, and if freedom looks like a one-bedroom rental with mismatched dishes and a garden that grows crooked cucumbers, I'll take it over being needed for all the wrong reasons. That evening, I stood in my kitchen, poured myself a glass of water and opened the window. The breeze carried in the faint scent of jasmine from the neighbor's yard behind me. The drawer was closed, letters sealed. In silence, I whispered to the empty room, not as confession, not as declaration, just fact. I wasn't the one who left. I was the one who stopped holding the roof up. Sometimes walking away and a signal of defeat. It's the beginning of peace. I used to think that love meant giving everything without keeping score. That if I kept saying yes, eventually someone would say thank you. But what I've learned is this: if you keep handing over pieces of yourself, one day you'll wake up and wonder what's left. You don't owe anyone your silence just to keep their comfort intact. If you've ever been Theon holding a roof up while everyone else lived like the house was theirs, I want you to hear me clearly. It's okay to stop. It's okay to let go. It's okay to be done, even if no one understands why. And no, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from people who expected too much and gave too little? Have you been painted as the villain for setting boundaries that should have been respected all along? Let me know in the comments. Drop one if this story touched something, and you tell me where you're watching from, your city, your story. And if you didn't connect with this video, that's okay too. I'd love to hear why your voice matters here. This is a space for real stories, for honest healing, and for people who are tired of carrying the weight alone. If this video spoke to you, please subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story. There's more coming, more truth, more lessons, and more people like you finding their voice again. See you in the next